Hello friends, welcome to Programming Concepts. My name is Amit and this is part 41 of ASP.NET Core MVC tutorial. In this video, we will talk about partial views in .NET Core MVC. This is continuation to part 40, client-side validation in .NET Core MVC. So please watch it before proceeding to this one. I shared the link in the description. So what is partial view? Let's read the definition first. Partial view is a razor markup file without an add page directive that renders HTML output within another markup file rendered output. The term partial view is used when developing either an MVC app where markup files are called views or a razor pages app where markup files are called pages. Alright, let's get back to Visual Studio. So, partial view are another step towards code reusability. If you look at our add employee page, we have a div where we associated property of employee class. So in the future, if we have to create, let's say, an edit employee page, this code will repeat itself. So to avoid duplicacy, we can create one partial view for this section. At the bottom, you can see we are using a couple of JavaScript validation scripts. This section can also be reused with the help of partial views. Let's reuse the script first. So the best place to put reusable views is within the shared folder. Although it is not necessary, you can place it anywhere and call it by providing an absolute path. Alright, let's create it within the shared folder for now. So right click on shared folder, add view, select razor view. Let's provide a view name. You can name it anything, but when we create the MVC template, name for the partial view which is created for validation is underscore validation scripts partial. So let me also name it underscore validation scripts partial. Underscore is not mandatory, but it's a general naming convention to prefix underscore for shared views. And again, it is not mandatory to use partial as a suffix, but it is good practice to use partial as a suffix for partial views so that just by looking at the name, we can identify what kind of view it is. All right, click on add. Now, we created this partial view to reuse our scripts. So just cut the required scripts from add employee view and paste them into our newly created partial view. So our partial view is ready. The next very important thing is how to tell our view to use this partial view. So we can do it in multiple ways. Let's see that. Let's get back to our slide. Use a partial view in markup file. Within a markup file, there are several ways to reference a partial view. We recommend that apps use one of the following asynchronous rendering approaches. First one is partial tag helper and second one is asynchronous HTML helper. Let's get back to Visual Studio. First approach is partial tag helper. The partial tag helper requires ASP.NET Core 2.1 or later. The partial tag helper renders content asynchronously. This is really important. It renders content asynchronously. Partial is a tag helper and you can expect it will be extremely simple to use. So we need to use partial keyword similar to HTML element and we can give our partial view name without extension, which is underscore validation scripts partial. Simple. Because in this video we will only work with add employee page. So let's quickly change our default routes as well. So within startup.cs class, change action to add employee. And let's run the program. If you click on submit button, you can see validation occur at the client level. it doesn't reach our debugger placed within our controller. Let's go to its view source, and at the bottom you can see both scripts are attached to the main view. But we haven't specified the fully qualified path, we haven't specified an extension. Still, our application is able to find the correct partial view. It means the .NET Core framework had set some default folder where our application is trying to find a partial view. Let's see where .NET Core Engine searches partial view by default. Let's change the partial view name from validation scripts partial to validation script partial 1. Save and refresh the page. And you can see we are getting errors. And the following location were searched. The first one is within the employee folder. Means searching from the same folder where we are calling this partial view. So we are calling it from add employee view, which is present under employee folder. So the .NET Core Engine gives it first preference. And the second is shared folder. All right. Another way is that we can also provide the name of the partial view with an extension. Let's change the name and give an extension. Save and refresh the page. Working as expected. So is there any difference between providing a name with and without extension? Yes, the view discovery will change. Let's see that. Let's change the name by appending 1 to it. Save and refresh the page. You can see now it is only searching for shared folder. You can also specify absolute path and relative path starting with tilde sign and double dot respectively. Explore it by yourself. Alright. Next is Asynchronous HTML helper. As suggested by Microsoft, when using an HTML helper, the best practice is to use partial async. Partial async returns an iHTML content type wrapped in task T result. Let's implement that. So at await, because we are going to use async, HTML.partial async, and within brackets specify the partial view name, which is underscore validation scripts partial in our case. Similar to partial view, we can specify .cshtml extension. We can provide absolute path or relative path. Everything is similar. Try it by yourself. Save and refresh the page. Click on Submit button. And you can see working as expected. Check its view source. And you can see both scripts added at the bottom. Next is, alternatively, you can render a partial view with render partial async. Let's see that. This method does not return an iHTML content. It streams the render output directly to the response. Because the method does not return a result, it must be called within a Razor code block. What does that mean? Just copy and paste partial async code and append render before partial async. And you can see it is giving error. And the error is cannot implicitly convert void to object. Let's apply curly braces after that. And you can see error is gone. If you mouse over, you can see partial async return HTML markup, whereas render partial async render not return, it render the markup. That's why its name is render partial async. All right. I am not going to run this. It will work. Try it by yourself. Till now, we use the async approach, but we have synchronous approach as well. Let's get back to our slide. So we have synchronous HTML helper, not tag helper. Here we are talking about HTML helper. Don't get confused. Partial is the asynchronous equivalent of partial async, and render partial is synchronous equivalent of render partial async. Let's get back to the Visual Studio. So instead of writing at await html.partial, just copy and paste. And let's write at html.partial only. Similarly, just copy and paste render partial async. Delete await because it will be synchronous. And delete async at the end. And that's it. We have synchronous version of HTML helper. But you can see green squiggly if you mouse over. You can see it is saying using partial may result in deadlock and use the async method instead. The synchronous equivalent aren't recommended by Microsoft because there are scenarios in which they deadlock. The synchronous method are targeted for removal in a future releases. All right. So till now we rendered a partial view from our markup file, which is our views.cshtml file. But what if we need to render a partial view from our action method, or you can say from our controller? That we will see in our next video. We will also render code used in add employee with the help of partial view in our next video. Let's quickly summarize. So when to use partial view? Partial views are effective way to break up large markup files into smaller components. In a large complex markup file composed of several logical pieces, there is an advantage to working with each piece isolated into a partial view. The code in the markup file is manageable because the markup only contains the overall page structure and references to partial view. Another advantage is reduce the duplication of common markup content across markup files. So when the same markup element are used across markup files, a partial view removes the duplication of markup content into one partial view file. When the markup is changed in the partial view, it updates the rendered output of the markup files that uses the partial view. Let's see when not to use partial views. Partial views shouldn't be used to maintain common layout elements. Common layout elements should be specified in _layout.cshtml file. Don't use partial view where complex rendering logic or code execution is required to render the markup. Instead of partial view, use the view component. Alright then, that's it in this video. If you have any queries related to the content of this video, do ask me in comments. Till then, thanks for watching.